I've been seeing some pretty strange car guy takes online recently, and to be honest, these days you don't know if it's rage bait or if it's actually real, but something that I'm seeing a lot of recently is there'll be a video of a GT86 or an MX-5, and the person making the reel or video might say, I drive this sports car or whatever. They'll basically call it a sports car, and then there'll be a good number of people in the comments below criticizing that there are people calling something like a GT86 a sports car, which to me makes no sense at all. And I know there will be some people probably watching this video who might agree with that statement, but the fact is that the GT86 is a sports car. The MX-5 is a sports car. I guess the main argument behind this is that people, say that they're not fast enough to be deemed a sports car, but the thing is, a lot of people forget what a sports car actually is, and I do really think it's because car manufacturers aren't really making as many quote-unquote sports cars or enthusiast cars as they used to. Now it's all about 0 to 60, it's all about just pure and utter performance. And I get it, the GT86 and the MX-5 are good examples of sports cars that aren't necessarily fast. They're not fast sports cars, but they are still sports cars. I mean, not long ago we had cars like the Toyota MR2 and the Celica, and it's definitely not just Japanese cars. We had cars like the Porsche 924. I mean, even cars like the first generation Boxster aren't deemed to be fast by today's standards. But what do all of these cars have in common? Well, they're lightweight, they're fun to drive, and most of the time they come with a manual gearbox. But they offer a quote-unquote sporty driving experience, which is just an engaging driving experience. It's an engaging, fun driving experience. It doesn't mean it has to be fast. I mean, there's even been loads of front-wheel drive sports cars like the last generation Celica and the Honda CRX. I mean, I even think the Alfa Romeo Brera is a very underrated sports car. And none of these cars are particularly fast, but they are fun to drive. I think people have forgotten what a sports car is, and just because it's not fast by today's standards, cars now are arguably too fast. They're dangerously fast. But the 0 to 60 of a GR86 or a GT86 in the 80s or even 90s would be deemed as quite a quick car. It just goes to show how these days, so many car guys are all about horsepower, they're all about performance, where they don't appreciate the fun stuff. I can properly enjoy my car on back roads. I drive a Mazda MX-5, it's not fast. It's not gonna scare it's not gonna scare you, but it is so much fun to drive, and I can fully push it without having to worry that much. I'm not always gonna be over the speed limit, and I can still enjoy my car. And that's kind of the beauty of a low-powered sports car. You can really rev them out and push them, but you don't have to worry about wrapping yourself around a tree. They're very easy and fun to drive, and they're great to learn before you jump onto something that's a lot more powerful. But just because they're low powered doesn't mean they can't be called sports cars. A lot of sports cars these days do have a lot of power, and I think that's where people get the misconception from. And I think if anything, some people call certain cars sports cars that aren't actually sports cars. For example, they'll call the new M5 a sports car, but it's definitely not a pure sports car. It's more of a performance saloon or performance sedan. I'm not sure what you guys call it across the pond, but that's a heavyweight luxury super saloon. That's not a sports car. But the same people who won't call a BRZ a sports car, they'll call an M5 a sports car. It doesn't mean it doesn't have sporty driving traits, but the BRZ is an out and out sports car. It's lightweight, it's a proper engaging car to drive, where the M5 is all about performance, it's all about 0 to 60 time. I mean, who's to say I'm wrong? Technically, this is all definition put down to the individual, but I do think most people would agree with what I'm saying. And of course, there might be people who disagree with me in the comments below, and that's fine, but I would love to hear why the GT86 isn't a sports car in your eyes, other than it just being slow. I do just want to quickly say, if you're new here, please consider subscribing. It is free and you can always unsubscribe at any time. Anyway, back to the video. Now, one thing I have seen someone say on social media, which I just totally disagree with, is that coilovers actually ruin the handling on your car. Now, one of my friends actually said this when he was first getting into cars, and I was completely shocked. And I mean, it's probably just misinformation, or if it's, they've bought some cheap coilovers off eBay or something, or they've, tried doing the setup themselves for the first time. The fact of the matter is, bad coilovers, yes, can probably ruin the handling of your car. If they're really bad. If they're bad coilovers, then yeah, sure. And of course, if they have been, set up incorrectly, then yeah, 100%. Coilovers are not going to be great for your car. However, race cars, track cars, rally cars, all sorts of different cars use coilovers. They will use upgraded dampers and suspension. Some of the best performing after, I mean, you guys already know this. I just find it incredible how, some people think that coilovers as a whole just, will mess up your car just because of their bad experience or from what they've heard online. I think the main issue of coilovers though is people, they may install them and they set them up incorrectly, especially if they don't get an alignment afterwards, and that can really mess up your steering. But the funny part about this is that coilovers do in fact, a good set of coilovers. For example, if you bought some, teen or BC racing coilovers, they're gonna, hugely, improve the handling of your car, especially with a good setup and also an alignment. One thing that really makes me laugh, and I've seen it a lot lately in my own comments, is that I'm not a car guy because I own an MX-5. And this could be the same said for any other car. And there was a car guy on Instagram who had an Audi TT, and someone was saying in the comments below that he isn't a true car guy because he owns an Audi TT. But first of all, this could apply for any car. Someone could have this opinion for any car you drive, but this makes no sense because you can be a car guy without even owning a car. The misconception that you need a certain car to be a car guy, or some people might say you need a fast car to be a car guy, or anything like that. Basically, you have to have to be a car guy. But no, there are loads of car guys who don't even have a car yet. They might be too young, or they don't have the money to even own a car. The fact of the matter is, if you're interested in cars, then that basically means you're a car guy. You don't need to have a certain car to be classified as a car enthusiast. Sure, it could mean you're a different level of car enthusiast. I'm not saying that doesn't apply. If you have a classic car, then you're definitely classified as a classic car guy or whatever. And if you have something, like a JDM car, you've got like an imported 300ZX, and yeah, you probably are more of a JDM car enthusiast. But at the end of the day, even if you're watching this video, you're probably a car guy because you have an interest in cars. That's all it comes down to. I don't understand why you need a certain type of car in order to be a car enthusiast. Before I had my MX-5, I had a baseline 1.4, Honda Civic. Nothing special about that car. But, was I still a car guy for owning it? 100%. Because, I was still interested in cars. I just didn't have an enthusiast car yet. But I think it's funny how they especially say if you do own an enthusiast car, then you're not a car guy, because it's not the sort of enthusiast car that they agree with or whatever. It's one of the worst takes I've heard this year. And whilst it's not very common, I guarantee if you look through my comments or even just on anyone else's social media, you'll see it. Now, this take I kind of agree with, but it actually really depends. And that is, manual cars are better. Now, don't get me wrong. Do I agree with this statement to some extent? Yes, 100%. I much more prefer driving manuals. They are way more fun. But are they better? I mean, not all of the time. If we're talking in terms of performance, these days, automatics are a lot faster and a lot more efficient than manuals. Just because, we're not as fast as a robot. Automatics used to be super heavy and slow and unpredictable, whereas now they're extremely direct. And, you've got paddle shifters. So you can basically use it as a half manual, and especially living in London, sitting in traffic can be very frustrating when you're driving a manual, and an automatic would be a lot easier to live with. But I do prefer driving manual because it is just more fun. But that doesn't mean they're better. Automatics are probably better these days. Like I said, back in the day, a manual probably was faster because, you was able to change gears faster than the automatic gearbox. But now it's the other way around. So, technology is improving. But yeah, I'm definitely going to drive manual until I physically can't anymore. Anyway, if you did find some enjoyment in this video, please leave a like and subscribe. It's free and you can always unsubscribe at any time. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one. Ciao for now.